Ujai. Welcome to the Tassanet and Sobek experience. Real talk, real time, where their experience is your medicine.
Ujai. Welcome back, y'all, to the Tassanet and Sobek experience, where our experience is your medicine. And today's topic is the healing drum. And to talk about this, to have this beautiful discussion, I have a very, very special friend, dear to me, a vital part of the community, one of our dearest brothers. Matter of fact, let me tell you a little bit about him. He is a community psychologist. He's also a native Angelino, which will make some of y'all happy. He has a BA degree in sociology, master's degree in marriage and family therapy, a master's degree in depth psychology, and a PhD in community liberation psychology with the emphasis in ecology. He is a master drummer of African and diaspora traditions. And most importantly, he is a Pan-Africanist. I love to introduce you to my Jedna, Baba Rahsan Cummings. Welcome, brother. Welcome to this show. Welcome.
Say I love you, brother. Right on, right on.
Say I love you.
Welcome, Baba.
Explain it to the audience what that means. Some people might not know.
Well, it's affirmation. It's affirmation and us greeting each other. And, we're saying Ashe. It's in the Yoruba language. So be it. It is so. Alafia, how is your world? How are you? And I guess you know what right on means.
Oh, you can dig that sound. Man. Real talk on that. Real
We can
talk
dig
on
that.
Okay.
Man, I've been trying to get you on this show for a long time, and I'm so glad, I'm so elated that he's here, man. I mean, y'all can just see me bouncing. So let me try to calm down for a quick second and get this conversation going. Baba Rahsan teaches drum classes here at the Caras. And I'm going to put a plug in for him. If you live in Los Angeles, every Thursday, 6 a.m. to 8:30.
That would be 6 p.m.
6 p.m. Thank you. See, I see the excitement just flows over, you know. But you have no drum or bring a drum, whatever's clever, bring your energy, and you'll be for a beautiful experience. You know, the power of the healing drum is, I've learned from personal experience with this brother. You know, so a little bit. You know, it helps me with my PTSD and past traumas. And that's what we're here to talk about, the medicine that drums provide for our community. And let's see, to Brother Rahsan. So, Brother Rahsan, what was the motivation for all this work you do in the community?
Well, basically, it was a call by the forces of nature.
Ashe.
Called by God, Olodumare.
Ashe.
And it also ties into my emphasis on Pan-Africanism, which is a political aspect, unity of African people all over the world, the continent of Africa, and the healing of our people as a result of the fragmentation and the wounds that we've experienced for the last 400 years.
Okay. I remember meeting you. You were really big in Leimert. You know, you created the drum circle in Leimert Park. I remember you telling me the story about that. You know, if I recall, it was during the riots of '92 after Rodney King.
That would be the uprising.
Uprising. Okay. See, I'm a Chicagoan, y'all. I'm still
That would be
learning.
the rebellion.
See,
Yes.
that's even better.
Okay. And I didn't start it. What I emphasize is it came out, it flowed out of the Ifa temple.
Ashe.
Okay, and that's what we were worshiping, and we were playing our drums, and we decided that it was too hot inside of the temple, so let's take it outside into the park. And that's what we did. We took it outside in the park, and we had classes there. When the rebellion took place, people from the community came to Leimert Park as a safe haven, somewhere to be. Outside around us, the city was on fire, and people were afraid, but they felt safe in Leimert Park. But what called them there was the drums. So we suspended the class and just made it a drum circle,
Ashe.
open to all people. And from that point on, it remained. And it's become a institution, an identifiable aspect of Leimert Park. So that's the history of that.
Okay. So within that, explain. I said the topic was the healing drum. So from our traditions, how important is the drum? Not just back in ancient days, but even in modern times. How important is the drum?
Wherever you go, wherever you find black people, I don't care if it's in the cities or it's in the South, Midwest, wherever you find, or the West Coast, wherever you find black people, and there's a park and there's trees, you're gonna find some drumming.
True.
Black people will find a way to drum because it's an intrinsic part of our healing process. Brothers in New York, brothers in Chicago, brothers in Philly, Boston, LA, wherever you find black people, you're gonna find a drum. And so it's a tool, it's a vessel for our healing. And we're gonna drum no matter what. Even during the days of slavery, we made our own drums. And we escaped into the woods, and that's how we communicated. That's how we kept alive. There's one depiction of this in Alex Haley's television version of the Root Saga, and I think it's the second half or part 2. Kunta Kinte, right, as you know, has a habit of escaping,
Yes.
right, but he gets caught, right, all the time, right. He hears this drum pattern. He follows this drum, and he meets a brother from his tribe, the Mandinka. And the brother's playing this signal, calling him, and he says, I know the route how we can escape. And he tells Kunta Kinte, are you ready to make that move? And Kunta Kinte says, yeah. He says, I'm going to give a call at a certain point, right? And then you come a-running and let's get on, right? Now, that may have been fictionalized character. It might have been Alex Haley's taking liberties with his creative writing. However, you can bet that somewhere, sometime, it happened. Because Africans made drums even during the times of slavery. And we know this in Haiti, for example. It was the Alligator Cave, and where the Africans were called to meet and to plan their uprising that eventually resulted in the total liberation of Haiti and the reclamation of African culture there. And it still remains to this day. It's an African island, Haiti, today.
Ashe.
The first liberated country in the New World, you see. And so that's how important the drums is, to us.
You have any questions?
Yeah, I did some research, and I remember looking on my Facebook page, and they were talking about the aspect of African drumming and how it relates to healing. And I said, well, there has to be some truth to this. Matter of fact, I know there's some truth to this because even the Caucasian race is doing research on it. And so how is it that we can implement this in our culture as a way of a healing modality? Is it possible we can do African drumming and talk therapy together in conjunction?
Well, absolutely. That's what happens in the drum circle.
Ashe.
You have people, they're playing drums, but there also is a discourse going on. The drums are communicating to one another, and also it opens up communication. It awakens our sleeping memory, and we begin to tap into our higher selves. Playing drums, as you know, is the highest form of cooperation. It's the highest form of community because it brings order out of chaos.
Ashe.
People are playing but they're playing in a sense of order. And there's meaning and there's intention. And it opens it up to more discussion about who we are and what our intentions are and how we're going to heal from the fragmentation that we have experienced in this 500-year journey,
Right.
and that's just what it is. It's a journey, and the drums takes us back home.
I have a question too. When I was reading your credentials, because you're just not a run-of-the-mill dude, and I've been curious when you say depth psychology. Could you define that more so in the aspect of in alignment with the ecology?
Well, depth psychology deals with the collective unconscious. That's what is meant by depth, right? European psychology in the beginning just dealt with mental illness as some kind of physical sickness. And later on, Freud and the other so-called fathers of European psychology rediscovered the unconscious. I say rediscovered because we Africans had already known about the unconscious.
Of course.
Okay.
Of course.
And that is in the depth of your psyche. So only about 10% of our consciousness is conscious. The rest of it is depth conscious. The rest of our consciousness is on the deeper levels of our soul, you see.
Wow.
And so that's what is meant by depth psychology. We deal with the collective, what connects us to our communities and other aspects of our being. And when we talk about self, we're not talking about the concept of the individual ego self. We're talking about self as a family, as a community, as a people, and our environment. Okay, our earth, right, and the cosmos, are all connected. When we drum, we open that up and we connect with that, you see. So where do drums come from? Trees, right?
Ashe.
Trees are part of the earth.
Ashe.
Right? Okay? And so there's an ecological thing that's going on here. We respect the earth. Our ancestors, our orishas, our elements of nature, they come from earth, all right? When we disrespect them, we also disrespect the earth. Or if we disrespect the earth, we disrespect our ancestors,
Ashe.
right? So building our communities is part of ecology. Preserving our communities is part of ecology.
Okay.
And building on and supporting our families is primary to build or to crawl out of this rat hole that we have found ourselves in.
So we have to develop the psychology of adapting an African culture no matter the discipline. Is that what you're saying?
Well, from an African perspective, human wholeness is all the forces that impact human life. You begin with the biophysical. That's the body, what we put in our body. Do we eat right? Do we pollute our body with drugs and alcohol? It affects our thinking.
I say, true that.
And then there is the social moral. Social moral aspects is very important. Do we have a form of ethics, moral values, that we are able to lay down for the substance of our culture and our families? What is right? What is wrong? Do we sell drugs to our community? That's morally wrong.
Ashe.
Do we oppress our own people? That's morally wrong. Do we do the things that that are morally disruptive to our community, you know, we have to do away with and be aware of. You know, and that's why we have these moral values. You know, family. You know, what is right. You know. Then there's a spiritual.
Very
We have
important.
to be spiritually connected. And that spirituality connects us to our environment, how we treat our environment, how we build in our environment.
Ashe.
Are we going to build our environment around capitalism, you know, the idea of individual acclamation of wealth and power, or are we going to organize our environments around communalistic values, sharing among our people? And then there's the cosmic level. Is understanding how we are connected to the cosmos, how our that ecological imbalance affects what's going on cosmologically as well.
Because my question is this too, because I know you're a practitioner and very well versed in EFI. So do you see a connection, EFI, Kemet, or other?
They all stem from the same source,
Excellent.
basically. They all stem from the same source. If you practice EFI, you can understand Kemet, you know. What EFI has to offer is that we have rituals, right? We have rituals that are still alive. You know, the EFI culture is still alive in Nigeria today, and it's still alive in the diaspora. As a matter of fact, that's what's kept us alive,
Ashe.
you know, because we all know that in the South, whether we're in South Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, or whatever, that our ancestors practice a form of EFI. Whether or not it's in the Christian church or so forth or so on, we've always practiced it, right? And of
Right.
course, if we go to Brazil, EFI is prominent, right? And if we go to Cuba, it's prominent. It's prominent in all those areas of the world where black people were. Cannot die, right? Because it's the source from which all things come out of. It's a cosmic egg that would birth all the other religions. So, because it has its traditions and its rituals that are still alive, it's practical and we can practice it. But it's no different than what we study out of, from Kemet or any other African spiritual system.
Because the one thing I love about playing drums is that it seems to be the great equalizer. You feel what I'm saying? Because I remember watching the movie Carlito's Way at the beginning, and he was in the introduction of the movie. He was talking about drugs, how drugs, is the great equalizer. And playing with you and playing with other brothers and watching, the brothers and sisters play in Leimert Park, I see how it brings everybody together, regardless if they're Christian, Ifa, Kemetian, Rasta. I noticed that about the drum. To me, it's soothing, and that's when So that leads to my next question: you being a family, being to family therapy, how would the drum play a role killing the family?
Because it brings order out of chaos. Okay. The universe wants order. You look at all the mythologies, whatever culture you're looking at, you start off with chaos, right? And then it's order, right? So the first order is the family. It's the first order. You have father, you have mother, or let's reverse it, mother, father, child. That's what you have. Now, when you look at the order of the way the drums are played in the traditional cultures, that's what you have. If you're playing the djembe, you begin with the bass lines, which are songba, that's the father, dunumba, that's the mother, kinkini, that's the child. And it's played in that way. And if we're going to be playing, candomblé, or Cuban samba, what have you, you still have the same order. You have the father, that's the quinto. Then you have, the totale, and you can have your bass drums. Always those three. Okay, so you say 1 + 1 = 3. Okay, father, mother equals child, right?
Right.
1 + 1 = 3.
Ashe.
See, that's how we work that.
Sound like supreme mathematics.
So there it is. So it's always order that we have. So when you're playing in a drum circle or something like this, no matter how you're playing it, there's that order. You have the lead drum. He's playing the lead drummer, but he's listening to the accompaniment, right? And accompaniment drummers are always listening to the songba, dunumba, kikini, and they're all staying in their lane. You see, and it's not playing on top of each other; it's playing with each other,
Ashe.
right? And so then now you have music, now you have art, and that's where the beauty comes in. That's what calls down to reach us. That's what transports us to another place. So it always revolves around the family. And in that, when you're playing, there's a certain responsibility that you have.
Explain that, Baba.
Well, I mean, if you're going to get out there and just do your own thing, and not listen to what everybody else is doing, you're not working in harmony with the group. You see what I'm saying? You're not being responsible. We're playing. I'm holding you up. You're holding me up. The person who's doing the talking, we're supporting that person. You see? And then when that person decides to take another role and it's my turn to talk, well, I expect that person to support me.
Ashe.
And they're holding me. We're holding each other up. So there's a responsibility that goes on, and I don't want to stop because I'm holding you up, because when it's my turn to speak, I want you to hold me up. You see what I'm saying? So there's that cooperation thing that's going on, and there's that order that's going on, and that permeates, deep down into, how we operate in our communities, in our culture. We were talking earlier about the elders. There's a respect for the elders. There's a protocol
Ashe.
for the elders. There is a place for the children. There is a place for the female energy. That big bass line in the dunumba, that's the mother, and she's that's the sauce. That's the real heart of the matter, right? The djembe drum or the songba, that's the father. He's going out and doing other things. But he leads, right?
Ashe.
He's a leader.
Yes.
And then you have the child. The child is playing around, filling in and feeling good, right? But there's still order. So when there's order in the drum circle, there's order in the community, right? And that's why it's so important that we keep drumming alive, Now, with the drumming, which is important, is the idea or the concept of ritual. Because when we're drumming, we're not just drumming, right?
Ashe.
We're creating ritual. And rituals are a connection to the higher order. It's drumming with intention. It summons the higher order to us. It brings back the stolen soul. Okay? You take psychology, for example. Trauma is when, let's say there is a incident that forces you to retrieve, let's say, to protect your psyche, part of you abandons itself. It gets cut off. We call that loss of soul. A person who's traumatized has no soul. That soul is gone, right? Because now you have the individual is a shell of himself or herself. What psychotherapy is supposed to do is psychotherapy is supposed to go into the deep part of your trauma, right? And through talk, finally summon back the soul, right? So, and then work through the trauma that you've experienced. Well, some trauma is so heavy that you can't talk about it.
Ashe.
People don't want to talk about it, It's so horrendous and so painful. But they make, other ways of expressing it through art,
Ashe.
through poetry, through different forms, But usually those forms have their limitations because it's if you're doing art, if you're doing literature, then it's the language that you're speaking, right? And if you're doing a certain type of art, say visual art, yeah, you can look at it, but you're gonna have to interpret it, right? But drumming is universal, right? Whether you're African in Africa or in Asia or Europe or Jamaica or Cuba, Brazil, North America, we understand that drumming.
Ashe.
All Africans understand that drumming. It's a connection there, right? And what that does is when we're drumming with intention and when we're supporting one another and when we're adding discourse, it retrieves the soul and soul, brings it back in accordance with who we are. Okay, from that point on, it's about working the soul. So that's how it's related.
I appreciate that answer. That's very cool and in depth, and I like the fact that you covered the feminine energy, because a lot of sisters that I have encountered consider drumming to be a male dominant aspect, but also I like the fact how you cross-reference other cultures, because Black people in America, we consider ourselves American without ritual. And I like the fact that you talked about calling back the soul, whether you're Asian or whatever culture, because it takes me back to watching a TV show about indigenous people, aka the Native American, where the sister was raped and she was in a sister circle in the teepee, and it was calling back her energy. And I as you was talking and explaining that, I love the fact that you show how universal our people are, and the fact of our traditions being the root of other cultures who are a part of us. Because I personally feel that if you melanated, regardless if you Caucasian, which have the least melanation, it's unifying, because right now in the society that we live in, it's so diverse. It's so it's so divided right now, even among people of color. When I mean color, I'm talking about Hispanic, Asian, all that type of stuff. So I appreciate what you were saying on that. It really brings it home for me, because I want to step into the aspect of Pan-Africanism now, and how the drum is relating to our traditions, modern and ancient, in the geopolitical aspect of things in Pan-Africanism.
Well, I have a question.
Oh, by all means, Queen, ask. I've been talking too much.
So, my king made a statement about women feeling that drumming is male dominant, but I have seen some women drum, and they are bad. So, as a woman, what are some ways that we can encourage women to, participate in the drumming?
Well, one thing you can do is very practical. Is you can go over to Brazil Cultural Center on Saturday and watch Bloco Obini, right?
Okay.
Which is an all women's drum corps, using samba drumming.
Okay.
The Brazilian samba, and that's being taught by Khalil, my son, right? Mm-hmm. And they were recently on a Tammy Mack show, and you'll see that in action. Okay. Also, if you go to Africa, there's in Les Ballet Africain, there's a group of women drummers, right? They all play doom doom and samba and djembe, and they dance. They do all that while they're playing.
Ashe.
That idea that women can play drums is a farce, and that came out of the gradual domination of patriarchy.
Uh-huh.
It was the women actually who created the rhythms in the first place.
Ashe.
Because it was the women who were took let's say a motar, where they were mashing, like say grains, right? And they're mashing these grains, with a large stick, and preparing the meals. That they started rhythms. They started with the mashing of the grains, right?
Right.
Chunk, chunk, chunk,
Right.
chunk, jack, chunk, chicka, chunk, jack, chunk, chicka, chunk. That type of thing. They created the rhythms. Right?
Ashe.
Okay, and then they started singing and clapping with it, right? It was the men coming back from the hunting, right, and heard it and said, "Oh, wow, that sounds pretty cool." Right now, they mashed the hole, in a motor, right? So now you can't use it anymore. Hey, we can use this as a drum. Let's put a skin over it, right? Let's put a skin over it, right, and then tighten it, and then we can play the rhythms that the women taught us.
Uh-huh.
You see what I'm saying? But the patriarchy is a gradual thing, that happened at a certain epoch in history, and then it spread, and that eventually began to marginalize women, right? And then it became codified as if that was the natural order, but has never been the natural order, not in any traditional culture,
It's the women that lead.
And that is changing now, more and more.
Ashe.
Because as countries, African countries are becoming liberated, women are at the forefront of their liberation
Ashe.
and are exerting themselves. And you have spiritual leaders who have researched and looked in the Odu and said there's nowhere that says that women can't drum.
Ashe.
There's nowhere that says that women can't be high spiritual leaders of the culture.
Ashe.
And
I
they
just
prove
want-
it,
Yeah.
So it's like more and more this, it's becoming evident, that women are stepping into the forefront
Right.
of the culture. And then again, like I said, you can look for more of that in the future.
Ashe. And I just want to say, ladies, yes, we are stepping into our forefront, but that does not mean we leave behind our male counterpart, because without the male, we're not complete, and without the female, the man is not complete. So I know you guys hearing that, the female is, we leading, and we started this, we started that, but it takes all of us. So don't get that feminist, twisted. Sometimes we get twisted up in that feminist, as women lead and women we. No, just calm down. It's everybody.
And also,
Well, that's a reaction, because when you've been oppressed, and then, let's say, for example, an animal that's been in a cage, you let it free, now it runs wild,
Right.
And then finally, it realizes it's got to come back home, right,
Ashe.
to get the food, right? When the people have been repressed for so long, or oppressed and repressed for so long, they want to experience freedom, and so one extreme, they go from one extreme to the next extreme,
Right.
But eventually it comes back to the balance, and so that's a natural thing that happens, and it happens, with people. Let's say, for example, when black people first recognized, and accepted our blackness, right, and then everything black became positive and everything white became negative, right?
oh yeah,
That was a reaction, Now we come back to the balance where, it's not about, one over the other. It's about the balance. That's what we talk about. That's what Ma'at is all about, the balance,
Right.
right? So not to worry, because we'll overcome that. The sisters will overcome that, and they'll come back, and there will be that balance, And of course, the men have to adjust, all right? Because a lot of men resist, sisters stepping out in the forefront.
True.
And that's a European imposition on us.
Right,
That's not
right.
how we naturally were.
Exactly.
Okay. So we have to get over that. Right. And then you'll see the balance happen. So, but it's
Right.
going to take a little bit of time.
I like a message to the brothers. You heard and elders speak on that, the aspect of us and our compliment to the sisters. I find in the struggle that there's a lot of chauvinistic, misogynistic, as Baba said, patriarchy.
Ashe.
There's a balance. Unfortunately, in the movement of African people, even in as you heard from the drum revolution, educational, some of us brothers who even call ourselves conscious or African centered still maintain a patriarchal aspect. And you just heard, and history has proven it, Dr. Du Bois writes about it. Dr. Diop writes about it. You know, and I mentioned these men because, you know, if a woman writes about it, then, you know, brothers are going to separate. But as you have seen, Baba has said, we have to adjust to women being alongside of us, in front. You know, being a Cometian, it is taught by my Abud, my high priestess, and even in Fudishi, who I consider a scholar, says that whenever there's a female Nturu complementing a male energy Nturu, she's equal in power or even more powerful. In African tradition, according to Baba Oba Tishaka, you know, he writes in the Return to the Mother Principle of Male and Female Equality, he writes about the Kantake system in Ethiopia where the mothers chose the king. And if the king was unworthy, you know, it was through her loins that she chose. Even if it was her own son, it was the nephew who was worthy. You know, he also states that as men, we must synchronize our male and female energy together and still maintain our manliness. So my thing is focused, like my queen, her focus is women. My focus is the brothers. Our focus is the nation. So I just want to say that to the brothers who are watching this, you know, and sisters who are watching this, embrace the fact that you have power.
Right.
It's not the aspect that you can create life without us, but the aspect of an African thought, how we emphasize I mean, I want to put that out there because I love what Baba is saying about that.
Yes, it's crucial,
you know,
that we understand that as African men and African women, that we're both equal and that we're both, you know, we can't live one without the other. We have to have each other in order to move forward. And so I really appreciate, you know, your perspective on that and your thought, your wisdom and your insight.
But I want to get to the juicy part where we talk about, I want to, explain your interest and experience in the Pan-Africanist movement, man. Because when people hear drums, you know, they stick to the cultural aspect, which is very important in our mental and spiritual liberation and revolution. How would you? So what? Just a little bit about your involvement in being a Pan-Africanist.
Well, you know, you're going to find that human beings act both consciously and unconsciously. Most of the time, we act unconsciously.
Ashe.
Most of the things that we do are by habit, unconscious, you know. Only sometimes the unconscious gets into the conscious, right? And then we're able to, like, understand why we behave in certain ways that we do. Okay. Drumming is the purest form of Pan-Africanism.
Ashe.
Without you even knowing it. Right? Lemur Park is the purest form or example of Pan-Africanism. Karas, a pure form of Pan-Africanism. Because what is Pan-Africanism? Pan-Africanism is consciousness, right? It was an idea, right? It says unity, it promotes unity of African people. Pan means worldwide.
Right.
Okay, worldwide. But it only became conscious, right? Let's say with the first Pan-African conference in 1900. But Africans have been practicing Pan-Africanism since the very beginning of history.
That
Ashe.
part.
Since the very beginning of history, we've been practicing Pan-Africanism. We're talking about civilizations of antiquity. We're talking about Kemet, Kush, Nubia, and on and on. They all knew that they were African. They all traded with one another. They interacted with one another. Their cosmology was born out of each other. They understood that they were African. The ancient Egyptians, they understood that they were Africans. The commissions knew that they were Africans. They say they come from the Valley of the Kings, or they come from
Happy Valley.
the Valley Kilimanjaro, where Uganda is,
Ashe.
in that area, and they migrated up, right, and then back down. They say they come from there. You see, so they understood that they were African. And then when you had Africans rebelling against slavery, they understood they were Africans. The very first abolitionists, or the brothers who ran away, they understood that they were Africans. They were Pan-African, you see. But that was unconscious, you see. Conscious Pan-Africanism is what we say. We give a label, Pan-Africanism, and we have a clear way of delineating what it is, what Pan-Africanism means. All right, number one, it means unity between Africans all over the world. Like my brother says, wherever you come from, as long as you're a black man, you're African.
Peter Tosh, man.
But it also involves economic system, you know, and where we have one currency. This unity is just like you had the euro, you know, in Europe, we have one currency. In Africa,
Ashe.
okay? It also means that we're operating under one political system, you see. So it's dynamic. Now we understand, in order for that to happen, we must decolonialize Africa.
That's right.
We must throw out the neo-colonials. That's what they are now,
Right.
right?
Right.
And of course, Africans outside are in neo-colonialism as well,
Ashe.
right? And when we throw out the neo-colonialists, right, and reclaim Africa for ourselves, for Africans, Africa for Africans, okay? Under one scientific socialism, which is one economy, one political ideological system, a united Africa. That's Pan-Africanism in a modern sense, in a conscious way. So the unconscious Pan-Africanism was the African rebelling and running away and trying to go back home, right? He was a Pan-Africanist, right? The civil rights leaders, they were Pan-Africanists. They were feeling the ANC, the ACLU, they understood the struggles of Africa, but they felt, Martin Luther King and his cohorts, they felt that we can better fight colonialism and imperialism in Africa. We can better fight it at home, you see. But there was always a link. There was always a link. W.E. Du Bois was a Pan-African,
Ashe.
you see. And he's considered the father of Pan-Africanism, modern Pan-Africanism. But again, it's the idea of taking the unconscious and putting it into the conscious, right? When you take the unconscious and put it into the conscious, now we have, we can organize. Now we have ideology. Now it's clear. And that's coming, that's coming more and more, you know, as we evolve. We have to take evolution, you know, in the context, you know, because, you know, you start off as a child, you have consciousness, little consciousness. You grow older, you have more consciousness, right? Our consciousness expands, you know. Today, even though it may not seem so, there is more consciousness today than there ever was.
Ashe. And I'd like to add on to that. I feel that the consciousness is more so now, even more, because with the year of return, Ghana, when Ghana started their campaign for the year of return, I have seen so many Africans here in America go back home. I had my first year of return in 2008, and it brings chills when I think about it. You know, so to have that, to want to have that yearning to go back to Africa, now it's the time.
As a matter of fact, you can be a dual citizen
You sure can.
easily. Very easily.
Very easily.
A couple of years ago, I had the opportunity to attend it was a conference. It was right here in Los Angeles. And they had over 20 African nations.
Wow.
And it was an organization that you can apply to and be admitted, and where you can be accepted as a citizen of an African country, dual citizen.
Ashe.
And there has been a lot of Africans, Americans, who have gone that route. A lot of us in the entertainment field, you don't know, a lot of us own property and live in Ghana today.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
They like Ghana because it's an English-speaking country. You know, it's easier, to get around. But you can choose one of several African countries, and they were representatives from these African nations, dressed in traditional garb. And they would name the names of the people who they have accepted, who have become now dual citizens. And I was there to play drums for the king of the Igbo.
Ashe.
Blessings.
Okay.
Blessings.
And
Blessings.
the king of the Igbo was there. And I was there with my drum corps. And we had the honor of playing for the king of the Igbo people. And something very beautiful happened. I was, and it was a dinner. It was a dinner there. There's all these people there. And they were naming the names of the people and organizations who decided, that they wanted to become dual citizens, and they were naming these names. And I heard this one young lady, they mentioned her name, and she stood up to kind of respond and give her reasons why, and she decided to claim Ghana as her home. And she mentioned, and then she said, "Oh my God," she says, "there's my teacher right there, the one who taught me. There's Mr. Cummings, that's me," right? I'm just walking through the audience, right? She remembered me,
Ashe.
right? From the 5th grade, when I taught her Afrikan drums, right, in our class, right? And apparently that stuck with her and stuck with her family. And she's attending college now. She's at Texas A&M, and she's a dual citizen
Ashe.
of
Ashe.
Ghana. And there are many, many others. And I'm taking that route too, but I'll be a dual citizen of the Republic of Guinea,
Ashe.
and where I already had dual citizen by way of marriage, and so and my son is a dual citizen of Guinea, Republic of Guinea as well, right? And you could be a dual citizen of more than one country. Now the point is that was unheard of
Right.
30, 40 years ago.
Oh yeah.
Now it's happening more and more and more,
Yes.
and you're going to see an increase in that.
Oh yes.
You see people walking around now wearing dreadlocks. You didn't see that 30 years ago.
Right.
I didn't see it when I first started wearing mine, 30 years ago. Not as much. Now you see people dressing more Afrocentric, people changing their names, even if they don't know what the names mean, right?
A lot of them don't.
They still change their names, it has an
Right.
Afrocentric sound, right?
Right.
Afrocentrism is a form of Pan-Africanism.
Ashe.
It's the gradual evolution of our consciousness, okay? So you're looking at the evolution beginning like all organizations, all organisms, they begin with the aggregate versus the family, and then it's the clan, then it becomes the state, then it becomes the nation, right? And it spreads. Then it becomes the continent. You understand?
Okay.
So eventually, Africa will be united
Oh yes.
because it's not an alternative. It's a necessity.
It's a necessity.
It has to happen, and it
Oh,
will
yes.
happen because Africans are now becoming conscious.
Ashe.
So when people think,
beautiful thing.
There's drum circles all over the country now. All over the country. Now you can buy a djembe or buy a conga. You can look on and you can order it online. It doesn't matter whether or not the company is a white company that's selling it. All that really means is that you could do it too.
I said that part. That part.
Right?
That
You can
part.
do it too. That's all that means. And besides, those white people who are playing our music, they're playing African music. Okay? They're playing African music. They're identifying with their own African selves. You see? Because, our phenotype is just the outer differences of human beings. Our genotype is who we are.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but I want to ask you a question, and I want you to save it because of we got less than 5 minutes, but I want a good 2. But I want to say to the audience, be sure to subscribe, like, connect with us, contact us. The Tassanet Sebek experience. You feel me? Our medicine, our experience could be
Is
your medicine. And also, the aspect of what we're talking about, dual citizenship. If you have any questions, leave a comment, contact us on Facebook, Instagram pages. Look up for Sebek, Mary Ra, and my queen.
Tassanet Ferret, Mary E.T. That's my Facebook and my Instagram. And on our YouTube page, Tassanet and Sebek Experience with the X. You can leave a comment and a question.
Also, so my question to you, Baba, in light of all this advancement, what steps, what can we improve as those of us who are conscious? What, generally and individually, what is your thoughts on improving and following through with our awakening?
Well, I refer to Gil Scott when he said the revolution will not be televised. Now, people have different interpretations of what that means, but I talked to Gil, right? And I knew anyway. It's a personal responsibility that we must take first. That's the first step. That personal responsibility is observing, right, social, moral aspects of our being,
Ashe.
right? That's important. That's the balance we need. That very important, and it begins with our families. Brothers and sisters, we must support our families.
Ashe.
Families first. And Ifa, it's all about the family. That's the first institution. Mother, father, child. 1 + 1 is 3. Okay, and we build on that. All this individualism, this idea, all this individual heroics, that's playing into modern capitalist European concept of the individual. You see, the individual, I, me, it's really us, it's we. It begins with the family. Brothers, we must take responsibility, of our families. That's where the revolution is. It begins there. It's not out in the streets. It's within ourselves.
Shay.
All right? It's with our children. If you don't have any children, adopt some children. You see? But we need to have, build on that. And as we start building on, and you're not going to do everything yourself, but your children will. I know this because I made the sacrifice myself, in my son. I can rest because I know that he's taking up where I left off.
Ashe.
Okay. I know this. And, a lot of times your children, you think they're not listening to you,
They hear
but then they
everything.
surprise you. They surprise you, because the more talking you do, the more discussion, communicating, it sinks in. And you might have to go through trials and errors and whatnot. But eventually, I have seen that they hear it, right? They hear it, and I could rest. I just don't want to rest right now, right? I have more work to do, right?
Yes,
but
too.
I know my son is taking up the struggle, so I don't have to see it, right? Because I mean, we're really dedicated. We're really Pan-Africanists. You know, we may not experience our total liberation in our lifetime,
Ashe.
but if you truly believe in it, you will experience it.
Right.
Right?
By teaching our children.
By teaching our children.
That's right.
You'll experience it vicariously because nothing ever dies. It only transforms. It
That's
only
right.
changes form. Okay? So give yourselves, Dr. Charles S. Finch talks about a 500-year window. Okay? If you're not willing to put in 500 years, right, then don't even talk about Pan-Africanism and liberation of black people. It's going to take that long to undo what we're into now. But we're making progress. We're moving forward. Not so much in the laws being changed, you know, in America and all that kind of stuff, right? Social, economically, we're still at the bottom of the level. We're never going to prosper in a capitalist system,
Ashe.
right? But we got to become conscious of that.
Right.
Many of us are still not conscious of it. We still believe in the myth, right, that we can make it and this is a democratic society, blah, 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 right? But the truth is, when we are becoming conscious, we are beginning to go back to our natural way of living. There are only two forms of societies. Those are your various egalitarian societies, you know, and your various capitalistic societies. You know, your capitalistic societies are based on the individual, and your egalitarian are based on the whole, the group. Okay, those are only the two kind of societies that ever been produced, right? And Africa is the purest form, has the purest examples, right, of egalitarianism, right? Historically, it is true, you know. So, again, we have to take the moral responsibility ourselves. You know, Malcolm X had, 4 children? He didn't waste no time.
He did.
Daughters, you know. He had children. And that's one thing I like about, you know, organizations like the Nation of Islam. They do preach moral virtues and values. That's important. And they're organized, right? And we don't all have to be in one organization and one group.
Right.
Just be in any group that's organized, right?
And
Because at
work
some
together.
form, we're all going to have to unite.
Ashe.
At some form, when the shit hits the fan, excuse my language,
No, keep
Oh,
it
yeah,
real.
no,
Keep
that's
it
real.
100.
That's
Keep it
real.
100.
we're all going to have to unite, right?
Yeah.
When the shit hits the fan, we're all going to, and if we're already used to organizing,
Right.
it won't be hard. It'll be hard for those out there in the street, you know, who are not organized, right?
Right.
But even they can get organized when they have to, right? You saw that in 1992,
Oh yeah.
right? You see it. They can get organized,
Yeah.
Shay.
right?
They got
just need
organized
to
when Nipsey
stay
got killed.
organized, though. See, that's the problem, right? That was an organized disorganization, right? But I have faith in our people, and I know it will happen, and because history is my guide.
Ashe.
You know?
And on that note, this conversation can continue forever, and hopefully, when you're not busy saving the black world, that you can come back and visit us again and offer this medicine for people. You feel me?
Right on, right on. I want people to go to classes, African drumming, dancing classes. Rahsan Cummings has one at Lemur Park. Rhythms Art Alliance. I'm here at Caras on Thursdays, and we have drum classes all over the city and dance classes all over the city. Find out where they are, go to them, join rites of passage organizations, come to Caras, join the NAACP, the Urban League, wherever, right? Because that's Pan-Africanism.
Ashe.
All right, that's Pan-Africanism. Right on.
And on that note, again, Baba, I want to thank you, and I also want to thank my queen for inviting you. You know, it was her brilliant idea.
Yes, it was my idea.
Yes, it was her brilliant idea. I was like, you know.
I have the most up respect for you, Baba.
Thank you.
I remember when I seen you at Pasadena City College. There was an event, and I seen you play,
Okay.
And I was just like blown away. And then you came to Karas and I seen you. I was like, oh, that's the psychologist. That's oh my God.
And then we have another connection too with my sister.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes,
we
your
did a
sister
documentary.
as well too. So I just want to say thank you and thank you, King. You know, for having an open mind. This definitely has opened up my mind, and it's important that we as Black Africans in America and the diaspora, but particularly in America, that we embrace our culture, because this is who we are. And drumming I think is one of the solutions that's going to save us and is saving us. There's a brother that comes to our drum class. He brings his whole family, and they all be drumming.
That's beautiful too.
And it's a beautiful thing.
Yes, indeed.
So don't forget, get your drum. We have drums. You know, you can bring your drum at 6 o'clock here at Karas. That's 7825 Southwestern Avenue, and then you have an opportunity to meet myself, Tassanet Sebek, and Baba Cummings.
And even if you don't have a drum, come
anyway.
Come anyway, because there's stories behind the rhythms that Baba Rahsan explains. You know, for myself, coming from being African and a man in America is traumatic, you know, personally as well as societal wise. Also, me being a Marine Corps vet, you know, having to deal with PTSD, taking Baba Rahsan's class, you know, the rhythms of the drum loosens my resonance and opens my frequency to receive from the celestials, you know, to be guided by the ancestors to operate in this world. So again, in conclusion, like this show
and subscribe,
share. Thank you.
And tell all your friends and family, because we are the Tassanet and Sebek experience, where our experience is your medicine.
Duau, thank you. Ahatu, fight yourself to keep yourself balanced. Shahem Hatep.